don't know about zeitgeist, but I do firmly believe that the history books will 100% be on our side. They're always on the side of people advocating for more liberty, even though we always lose.
Well, in defense of the zeitgeist, I think trust in our leaders has never been lower, which I consider a good thing. It's becoming more and more obvious that whichever side of the political aisle you're on, you're being lied to just all the time, whether it was for the terror war or for the COVID restrictions or the banker bailouts or whatever it is. More and
Well,
more people are waking up to the fact that what they were taught in fifth grade civics was clearly a lie, and the world just doesn't work like that. And maybe we should rethink about the size and scope of government and work to make that better.
Well, I think the reason that there isn't as much outrage as we would hope is because they printed trillions of dollars, and so a lot of people are being
Yeah.
paid to just sit home. Whereas if they was having a serious financial impact on them, which is an immediate effect, they would be outraged.
It's true.
We know somebody who was made homeless because of this whole thing,
Hmm.
and he's been very radicalized by this, and so but there's other effects that it's going to take some time, but we're already seeing inflation, prices rising, and once this house of cards falls apart, I think we are going to see everybody say, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah, well-fed people never revolt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's not until you start having bread shortages that
I'm not
all of a
gonna
sudden,
I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me.
yeah, why rock the boat, right?
Yeah.
Things are working out. And then
Well, what's
obviously, yeah, please.
Spike dropped a white pill the other day, and he pointed out how less than 1% of the population is employed by the government, and if just 5% of the nation refuses to not comply, they are hopelessly outnumbered.
Yeah.
So, that's just it. I mean, we just need to encourage people to practice civil disobedience, and we need to be out there, and we need to let them know, hey, there's other people that feel the same way you do, and by them seeing us, we'll give them hopefully courage to follow. And you need leaders to step forward that are willing to say things that need to be said, willing to do what needs to be done. And then if you do that, I think other people will go, okay, well, there are people that are sharing my sentiment. Let's go ahead and join them.
Yeah, we need to broadcast a message of liberty, and maybe the most effective thing is just lead by example. Shortly after King Sisolak reintroduced the new mask mandate, I went into the supermarket and just didn't put a mask on, and everybody else in there had one on, but nobody said a word to me, which I considered a good sign. And one poor guy, the only other guy in there without a mask, saw me and rushed over to say hi. He was almost weeping, just so happy to see somebody else that wasn't, just obeying some idiotic, stupid. Anyway, just going out into the world and not complying, I think is a good thing. And speaking about why you're not, be the living example of what we think society should be like.
Well,
I've gone to a number of different places without the mask on, and I think I've maybe been asked maybe twice
I'm seven
to
for
put on the
seven.
mask.
No one's ever said a word. Not
Yeah,
yet.
that's great.
I've been to a few places, but for the most part, most people won't say anything. They all know at this point that, it's just been going for so long. None of it makes any sense. Oh, let's wear a mask into a restaurant. So you can spread it walking in, but the minute I sit down, I stop spreading it. I can't give it to somebody. I mean, how does this thing work if that's the case? I have to
Yeah,
have
I
my
think
mask
there's
on to
a.
walk in, but the minute I sit down and have a drink in my hand, I can take it off.
I think there's a large, silent, red-pilled majority who isn't saying anything, but they know this is nonsense. So
I
try and reach out to those people and show them that a better way exists.
Yeah, more than anything, do not comply. And demonstrate that like there's you the non-complier, you're not a threat. You're happy. You're healthy. You're
That's the line.
helpful.
I haven't had to use it yet, but if somebody walked up to me and said, "Do you have a mask?" My plan is to say, "Oh no, I'm healthy."
Yeah.
I think a lot of this, it has to do with, it's the old phrase that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I felt early on that nobody wanted to be seen as not doing something. But, so they're like, oh, we have to do something. Like, as if we do nothing, we'll be totally blamed. So anyway, a lot of the mandates and things that they do probably aren't effective at all. It's just I got to feel good about myself, and I got to feel good that we actually tried, we actually did something, anyways, know that maybe none of this is grounded in logic or science. And it kind of gets into, Hayek's pretense of knowledge, or the pretense of knowledge, right? And the use of knowledge in society. And we kind of get into, the whole reason central economic planning doesn't work. And the same exact thing applies to fighting a pandemic.
Or fighting terrorism, by the way. I mean, it's the exact same mindset as why we got the TSA and the Patriot Act and Department of Homeland Security.
Well, and there is knowledge that exists in society that can actually combat the pandemic, but it's not available to the bureaucrats in those. They don't have the God mind. They can't look into a crystal ball and say, this is the perfect solution. I mean, everything's always been 25%, 50%. How do you know what a capacity requirement is supposed to be? You don't know. And the way that you actually solve these problems is this knowledge can be discovered if we allow people to have individual risk assessments and to let people do, basically the logistics can be handled by, getting into like, iPencil and the invisible hand and whatnot. But yes, basically our voluntary interactions in a free society will solve this much better than any government ever could.
Right, and that leads into the let 100 flowers bloom, or in this case, let 50 flowers bloom, right? Fortunately, we still have a certain degree of federalism, at least for the moment, until the federal government starts acting in a more authoritative manner. But we can look to other states that have had radically different policies, and assuming that policies are the only thing that make all the difference, like Nevada is needlessly punching itself in the nuts right now. And it's going to continue to do so, even though we can look to other states that, I know it's a sample size of only 30 million people, but right now, Nevada has more deaths per million due to COVID than Florida does, in spite of the fact that Florida has vastly more retirees than Nevada does. So this does not make any sense if policies are the difference. Which either we should be adopting Florida's policies, or the policies don't matter. In which case, if the policies don't matter, just let people act according to their own free will, as opposed to dictating how it is that they need to behave. Yeah. And the same thing is true of Texas, but with the larger sample size.
Well, then everybody wants to act like Sweden doesn't exist as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Granted, that is a smaller sample size than Florida by a lot. But yes.
There's the opposite side of that. These highly vaccinated places like
Iceland, Israel,
or
all these I countries.
Great Britain, I think, has like 80% vaccinated. And
I know Iceland. Everybody has 81% of people have at least one vaccine, and 76% have had both vaccines.
I think Israel's even higher.
I think Israel's 80% was what Berenson said the other day.
And both of these countries, I know Iceland better, they have more COVID cases right now than at any time since January of 2020.
You guys are all making some great points, but I think you're marching down the wrong road. It almost doesn't matter whether the tyranny is effective or not by some metric or another. The tyranny is tyranny, and we have to argue against it. Say the mask limits the transmission of the virus by 23% or something. Are we supposed to care? Are we supposed to allow them to force that down our throats? We need to be arguing about the principle that we get to decide what our risk profile looks like, right, and what we deem acceptable, and then allow private property and the freedom of association to allow how policies are made on a local basis, not imposed from up top. That has to be our central argument, and tell King Sisolak straight to his fat face that we disagree and we're not putting up with this.
Well, and that's what this country is all about, is
Amen.
At least the founding was self-determination and being able to make decisions for yourself and being able to, take a calculated risk for yourself.
Well, I mean, yes, at least for white land-owning Christian males, yes.
But I mean, well, okay, maybe I scratched the
But no,
founding
no, in
part,
general, right? Like
but a lot
that's
of
the
people that were
ideal.
coming
It was
here
an
to seek
imperfect
opportunity, a lot of
execution.
people that
Yes.
immigrated here to seek opportunity, that was the idea. I don't
Yeah,
need the state. I don't want the state. I'm here so I can make a life for myself free of
yeah.
the state.
There was just a
So
gulf between aspiration and execution. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember what the percentages of people who came but then went back to their homeland. Do you? I don't know if you guys. It was a
Oh,
high percentage. Yeah, there
what?
was a.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, well, I think that the one issue that's sort of um, as far as like the vaccination mandates, which I think are going to be coming. I think it's going to be the line for a lot of people. I think. Um, when
Well, I think
we're
especially if they define it as you need to be fully vaccinated,
yeah
right?
yeah
Because the fully vaccinated means you need to also have your booster up to date. And I think there's a lot of people who got their initial vaccine because when those were first rolled out, they were the solution, right?
yeah
And one thing that continuously frustrates me is equating being vaccinated to being immune to COVID.
yeah
That's not at all the case.
yeah,
There's the only way to be immune to COVID is to previously have had COVID. Just
mhm,
because you've been vaccinated, that all means that, and stated as stated by the pharmaceutical companies that develop these, its only purpose of the vaccine is to minimize symptoms. It
yeah.
does not give you any sense of immunity to these, which is radically different than pretty much every other vaccine that's been developed in the history of modern medicine.
And I don't know if there was one thing that they weren't tracking, but like people who are vaccinated, they have, if not just as much, but even higher viral loads. So they can
yes,
They're
correct.
transmit.
still contagious, yes.
Yeah,
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 Which as we learn this, I think that there's going to be a lot of people when there's an opportunity to go back for a booster, like come get your booster, and there's just going to be a lot of people that are like, I'm good.
well,
I like
yeah. Where?
I
Well,
want to
what?
believe that that's the case at least.
So,
yeah.
what figures have you guys seen on how long antibodies last from like Pfizer and Moderna?
I
'Cause
haven't.
I've been seeing things where they say like they've checked people like 6 months later and the antibodies are gone. And so now, even if you assume that the vaccine was 100% effective in protecting us, we're now in a world where if they mandate this, I mean, we want to live in a world where we have to get a booster shot every 6 months just to be able to be a normal person in society,
Yeah.
you know? And I just, that seems like a nightmarish totalitarian scenario in my mind. And not to mention, too, I find it funny that a lot of people on the left, um, you know, traditionally have been very anti-corporation, very distrusting of big
Hmm.
corporations. Now all of a sudden you have this big pharmaceutical company, and with no liability, and we're in the middle of an experiment, and a lot of times it takes a long time for conclusions to be drawn. For science, we're still in the middle of it. We don't know what the long-term effects are, and a lot of them now are just saying just trust the science,
Yeah.
just
The
trust the
exact
science.
the exact same people that would tell you not to eat GMO food
Yeah,
because we don't know yet, and 20 years from now you might get cancer, are today screaming in your face and how irresponsible you are for not getting this 6-month-old vaccine. It's like, I don't, how's that even work? Like the teams have been so jumbled over the past 18 months, 5 years really.
Does
Um,
anybody know what has Nassim Taleb said about the vaccines? Because he's
I
so
don't know.
big on like he hates GMO foods because of the precautionary principle.
right.
We don't know what the threat is, but if it is as bad as it could be, could be civilizationally devastating.
It's
His
that
whole
black swan
black
sort of
swan
idea.
event. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm wondering if he's consistent and views these mRNA vaccines the same way.
And sometimes you find consistency in the least expected corners. People, and it's wonderful, and like I guess to a degree, like you can like cite Bernie Sanders at least in
Yeah,
his voting records. Like he may be wrong on everything, but hey, the man is consistent about being wrong every single time, and good on him, right? Like,
which is worth a lot. I mean,
yeah,
cherish such people.
I will take that over someone who just like I don't know. It's not random. I don't know if they're buyable or what. They're just they're susceptible to the winds of cultural, like the moment.